Senator. There you are. All right, well, thanks for having me. We're going to get started here. A couple housekeeping things. First of all, on the back corner of the NRA table, if you want to put your name and email address, I'd be glad to send it on to DHS. No. Put your name there, and I'll be glad to send you this PowerPoint presentation. There's a ton of information, a lot of quotes that I don't have time to even go into, and a lot of research I've done that I put in the notes of that PowerPoint slide. So my idea is if I spent 20, 30 hours preparing this presentation, why make you guys go do and replicate the work? So if you want to put your name and email address, feel free, and I'd be glad to send you that. Secondly, next to it, Bill was talking about the In the Constitution series that I do, the 10-part series. There's a write-up back there if you want to look over that and kind of see what the series is about as well. So we'll get started here. Bill has been advertising this as gun control and the Constitution. And notice my slide here is a little bit different. Gun control in the Constitution. I think half of you may stand up and say, wait a second, I'm out of here. There's no gun control in the Constitution. My goal here tonight is to convince you guys that there really is a ton about gun control in the Constitution. There's a lot there, and we're going to talk about it and kind of get an idea. Of course, opposite, not for gun control, but against gun control, right? The question, when I was talking to Sheriff Whalen yesterday, he made an interesting comment, or interesting question that I decided I'd start out the presentation with tonight. He said, now, is it really possible? Is it really possible that we could actually have our guns confiscated? Wouldn't that just cause a civil war? Yeah, of course, right? Now the question, though, it really is possible. It really is possible. How would it happen? Well, it would happen if the citizenry is convinced that it's the best way to provide security and peace. Okay? And the only two conditions that would exist on, at least in my mind, is the first one is you have an uneducated, misinformed, deceived populace who think that's the best way to do it. Or secondly, you have the government who takes advantage, let me get my notes here, takes advantage of a situation where there may be some civil unrest, some public shootings, etc., and they take advantage and say, this is the only way we're going to control violence. We have to confiscate guns. Okay, that's how that could happen. So what we're going to address tonight is education. The key to making sure these circumstances don't come up, education. So we understand we can tie this, we know that we have the right to self-defense, but can we tie that to the Constitution? Where does the Constitution set that up? Because we're a republic, and republic means rule of law, and our law is the Constitution. So you can have a really nice opinion about gun control and how it's bad, but if you can't tie it back to the Constitution, then you're just an opinion. And you're going to just argue with someone else about their opinion. But what if you can tie it back to the Constitution? It's no longer an opinion, it's the law of the land, the supreme law of the land. Okay, so we're going to get into some of that, and hope to have some fun. We're going to start out here. Let me make sure this is focused good enough. There we go. Who here has read A Tale of Two Cities? Charles Dickens. Okay, I have not, but I've read the first page, I think. Here it is. You'll all be in my boat here in a second, okay? Here we go. Charles Dickens, the very first part of A Tale of Two Cities says, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. And why would I start out my presentation this way? Well, one kind of interesting thing is, what a great time to be alive, right? Why be born when it's kind of the boring time? This is the exciting time. This is when it's time to stand up and really stand for our freedoms and really get involved and really enjoy the freedoms that our founding fathers put into the Constitution for us to enjoy. Another reason I put it together, though, is this. You'll see quickly here, kind of a play on words. We're going to talk tonight about two tales of one city, okay? And hopefully when you think of gun control, the first thing you'll think of is two tales of one city. And here are the two tales. And I hope to give this proper respect and honor because I don't want to make light of this, and I'm not trying to by any sense, any stretch. But the two tales of one city. Here we go. Here's the first tale. The place is Aurora, Colorado. The location is a theater full of people attending the premiere of the latest Batman movie. Okay, so you guys already know where this is going to go. The time is 12:38 a.m., July 20th, 2012. The perpetrator is a man named James Egan Holmes. The victims, 12 dead, at least 50 injured and wounded. Okay? Now the tragedy is no one was armed to defend themselves. And the impact, millions mourn and grieve. This is an international event. People heard this all over the world. Okay? Government leaders advocate gun control as the solution to this and all other future tragedies. Okay? That's our first tale of one city. And I'm going to give you the second tale of one city. This second tale of one city, the reason I call it that is because the place is the same, Aurora, Colorado. The location is a local church building in Aurora. The date, April 22nd, 2012. The perpetrator is a 29-year-old man named Kieran Parker, a convicted felon just out of jail. The victims, one congregant and the shooter himself who was killed by a congregant carrying a gun. Now the tragedy, I should change the slide because I put one innocent life. It's still two human lives, right? So 2 human lives really is the tragedy, not just the one, but it is a tragedy. Any human life lost is a tragedy. The impact, though, is because the perpetrator was able to claim only one life before being killed himself by someone carrying a gun and acting in self-defense. It garnered relatively little publicity. By show of hands, how many people knew about the second tale of Aurora? Okay, and you guys are the well-informed ones, the one who understand are probably subscribing to magazines and email alerts that tell you about these things. But in general, I have a brother-in-law who lives in Denver, right outside of Aurora. I said, did you know about this? I didn't have a clue. I didn't hear about this. Why didn't they hear about it? Because gun control worked, or didn't work, right? Because the congregant was armed, the man shot someone, and he was shot himself. Okay? We learn a lot of interesting things from these 2 tales of one city. And the first tale is a huge tragedy, and many, many were killed. He was dropping magazines. He had a gun that jammed. He was just shooting and shooting and shooting because he was in a gun-free zone. The man in the church got 1 shot off and then was killed himself. It wasn't a gun-free zone. Okay? Here's how I like to look at gun control, and this is kind of the lesson I learned from this. He who has the gun has the control. Isn't that the lesson we learn from these 2 tales of one city? He who has the gun has the control. Mao Zedong. Anyone heard of Mao Zedong before? Mao Zedong killed, now this is I would hate to be infamous for this, but there's a lot of argument over how many people he killed. Some people say 20 million, some people say 60 million. So he goes down in history as not really sure how many people he killed, but tens of millions of people. Here's what he said: political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. Is that true? Ask him if it's true. You bet it's true. That's exactly what he was able to do, to tyrannize his people. Okay, so we're going to get some. What I love about these presentations, what I love doing is learning what the Founding Fathers said, because they weren't just guessing. They weren't taking their best shot at it. Okay, they were inspired. They knew what they were talking about. They had studied history. These men, people call them country bumpkins, etc. They had learned Latin and Greek. They'd studied classics in the original languages. They were not uneducated. They were very, very much the cream of the crop. Okay, and here's Samuel Adams. He's one of them. Samuel Adams is kind of a fireball. I don't know if you guys know much about him. He's very much a fireball. He said this: the Constitution shall never be construed to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceful citizens from keeping their own arms. So the Constitution shall not be construed. Well, let's look at the Constitution. Let's look at what they have to say, okay? And where are we going to start? Second Amendment. That's a good place to start. Okay. Our Second Amendment. First of all, a well-regulated militia be necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's our Second Amendment right. Correct? You should be going like this. It's not our Second Amendment right. It is our God-given unalienable right that the Second Amendment protects government from infringing upon. That's absolutely critical. The Bill of Rights, in some ways, is misnamed. It's not a Bill of Rights. It's a bill of prohibitions on the government from infringing on our God-given unalienable rights. Does that make sense? I know it may sound like semantics, but maybe it's not. Because if the Second Amendment gives us those rights, then the Second Amendment can take them away. But if God gives them to us and they're unalienable, no one, that's what unalienable means. No one can take those away. It's an unalienable right. It's not a Second Amendment right. Our God-given right to self-defense is a God-given right, and the Second Amendment protects government from infringing on that right. Kind of interesting thing here. We're going to try to break down some other parts of the Second Amendment. First thing, the militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Now, the militia is a term that shows up in the Constitution. It's never defined, but so are the words states, Congress. Those words show up in the Constitution. And you don't just take words out of the Constitution because you feel like it. Militia doesn't exist today. It's not there. What happened? It just kind of disappeared. We just forgot about it. Okay? It's kind of an interesting thing. So what is the militia? There's a man named George Mason. George Mason isn't talked about very much, but George Mason was very critical. He was an incredible, very organized man who really helped the convention flow. And he asked this question. He said, like I did, ask, sir, what is the militia? What is it? By the way, I'm all about comments and questions. That's what makes it fun in my mind. So the people, someone yelled that out. That's exactly. It is the whole people. That's who the militia is. It's the whole people. To disarm the people is the best and most effectual way to enslave them. Okay? Did the founders get this stuff? You bet they got it. There's quote after quote. We'll get into some more of these. Yes?
Do you intend to speak about the Wyoming Constitution, what it says about the militia?
I can later, yeah. I don't...
Is it in the talk?
It will be, yeah. Okay. It's in my notes in the talk.
All right.
Article 17, yeah. It's pretty straightforward. There's 5 sections in Article 17 of the Constitution, the Wyoming State Constitution. It's pretty clear about some things there. Now, a modern-day argument. You guys may have heard this. It's really kind of a comical argument. It says that the Constitution only grants the militia the right to keep and bear arms. Now, wait a second. A simple reading of the text says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that makes sense, right? Because the militia is the people. The people have the right to keep and bear arms. It's not just there for the militia. It's for all of us. All of us. The right of the people to keep and bear arms. Right of the people is an interesting phrase. Right of the people is also used in the Fourth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. The right of people to peaceably assemble. The right of the people to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. The right of the people. Okay, so this phrase, you see it again, it's about the people. It's not about the government. The right of the people to keep and secure arms. And to define some of these terms here, to keep means to own, to have, to possess. And to carry means, or to bear means to carry. Okay, to carry on your person. All right.
So what's the meaning of the phrase there that's not highlighted?
Which part?
Starting with the word A and all the way through the word state.
Thank you for the question. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Good point. We are going to get to that. We've got about, believe it or not, about 18 more slides just on the Second Amendment. So we are going to cover that. If I haven't by the end, raise your hand and said, hey man, you told me you're going to answer this question. Okay, Patrick Henry puts it really well. Bill.
May I just one statement, especially while Jim is here. The Wyoming Constitution does in fact establish the whole people of Wyoming as the militia. And our sheriff has the authority by the Constitution to literally call up all citizens between the age of 18 and 72 if he needs them. That's in the Wyoming Constitution, folks.